After a months-long, multi-billion-dollar talent raid that shook Silicon Valley, Meta just slammed the brakes on AI hiring. This comes just weeks after the company spent billions on nine-figure pay packages and a stunning $14 billion investment to poach a single CEO. How can a company go from an all-out sprint to a dead stop overnight? Meta calls it basic organizational planning. And while that may be true, the context is important. This freeze is the natural result of a binge and purge cycle triggered by a critical failure in its own AI models, leading to a panic-driven spending spree that the company is now trying to digest. To understand this sudden reversal, we need to ask some critical questions. How did Meta's celebrated AI research lab fall so far behind? What was the product setback that prompted this reboot? And what challenges does this new approach create for the company? Let's unpack this. To understand why Meta had to spend billions on outside talent, you first have to understand the slow decay of its own. For years, Meta's AI research lab, known as FAIR, was considered a crown jewel of the industry. Founded in 2013 by AI pioneer Yann LeCun, its mission was to advance the state-of-the-art through open research. And it was incredibly successful. FAIR produced foundational work that powered the entire social media giant, from the computer vision that automatically tagged friends and photos to the natural language processing that helped moderate content across its platforms. Its research laid the groundwork for many of the advances that define AI today. When the generative AI race began, it was FAIR that delivered Meta's comeback. After being caught flat-footed by ChatGPT, it was the FAIR team that developed the first Llama models, the open-source breakthrough that proved Meta could compete at the highest level. But behind the scenes, FAIR was being hollowed out. In a sign of the turmoil, the lab's head, Joelle Pineau, announced her resignation just days before the company's critical Llama 4 launch. As Mark Zuckerberg pivoted the company toward more immediate commercial products, the vaunted lab was, according to a Fortune report, shoved out of the limelight. This wasn't just a strategy shift, it was a resource war. According to former employees, FAIR began getting access to less computing power for its projects than the teams focused on generative AI. Talented researchers, frustrated by a move away from blue sky research and internal battles over resources, began leaving for rivals and startups. The most damning signal came from the team that created Meta's biggest AI success. Within 6 months of publishing the original Llama paper, more than half of its authors had left the company. As one former employee put it, the lab was dying a slow death. By the time Meta was ready to build its next-generation AI model, its original all-star team was gone, and the innovators who built Llama had been sidelined. This story of FAIR's decline is a classic example of a foundational crack forming long before a public crisis. Uncovering these internal vulnerabilities is the kind of analysis we do every week in our newsletter, ARPU. If you want to understand the early warning signs that signal a company is in trouble, you'll find the link in the description. With its foundational research team sidelined, the pressure to deliver Meta's next big AI model fell to a new, more product-focused group. And the expectations set by Zuckerberg himself were enormous. Publicly, he boasted that the new model, Llama 4, would be a beast. Internally, he told employees he wanted it to rival the best systems from OpenAI and power a new generation of voice-powered chatbots. But when the model was unveiled at Meta's AI conference in April, it was clear something had gone wrong. The general perception is that the model did not perform as well as those of rivals. Key features like voice interactions weren't ready, and many developers left the event underwhelmed. The launch was surrounded by controversy as independent researchers quickly deduced that Meta's own performance benchmarks had been designed to make the model look more advanced than it actually was. The public failure triggered an immediate and intense reaction from Zuckerberg. According to a report from Futurism, the CEO was absolutely furious and intensely frustrated at Meta's failure to keep pace. He went into what employees call founder mode, a headspace he often inhabits during a crisis. This meant late nights, weekend work, and constant check-ins on the tiniest details. He reportedly grew aggravated with the previous AI leadership and demoted the head of Gen AI unit, Ahmad Al-Dal. For Zuckerberg, this was more than just a product-ness. As the New York Times reports, Mr. Zuckerberg knew Meta was falling behind, which was unacceptable. It was a setback that prompted an urgent reassessment and a multi-billion-dollar effort to regain the company's competitive footing. Meta's solution was to throw bodies and an unprecedented amount of money at the problem. The New York Times reported that Zuckerberg kicked off a frenzy of activity, personally leading the charge to recruit a new army of AI talent. He began sending personal emails and WhatsApp messages to top researchers at rival labs like OpenAI and Google, asking them to meet at Meta's headquarters. The offers that followed were astronomical. According to reports, prized researchers were offered pay packages worth 9 figures, with some reaching as high as $100 million. The most spectacular attempt was aimed at Andrew Tulloch, a leading researcher at the startup Thinking Machines Lab. According to the Wall Street Journal, Zuckerberg dangled a package that could have been worth as much as $1.5 billion. To put that into perspective, LeBron James, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, made about $500 million for his entire NBA career. That single offer to Tulloch was worth about 3 times the on-court salary LeBron James earned. When direct offers weren't enough, Zuckerberg turned to a novel and aggressive new tactic, the reverse acqui-hire. In a stunning move, Meta invested $14 billion for a minority stake in the AI startup Scale AI, with the primary goal of hiring its 28-year-old founder, Alexander Wang, to be its new chief AI officer. But this wasn't a normal investment or a typical acquisition. Meta didn't buy the whole company. It bought a minority stake, and the money went directly to Scale AI's existing shareholders, essentially cashing them out. In return, Meta got the company's CEO. Why do a deal with such an unusual structure? The answer is simple: to avoid regulators. A full, outright acquisition of a major AI player like Scale AI would have triggered a massive, lengthy antitrust review from the US government, which is already scrutinizing big tech's growing control over AI. By structuring the deal as a minority investment combined with a talent hire, Meta got the prize it really wanted: the leadership, while making it much harder for regulators to intervene. It was a brilliant, if legally questionable, way to buy a company's most valuable asset: its people. By August, the Binge had successfully netted over 50 new employees, including more than 20 from OpenAI, 13 from Google, and others from Apple and xAI. Zuckerberg had spent billions to assemble a new superintelligence team. The only question was what he had actually bought. This massive influx of expensive, high-profile talent created a significant organizational shift. Zuckerberg had assembled a new team of all-stars, but they had no field to play on. The move reportedly unsettled some Meta's existing AI staff, who fear being sidelined. The aggressive poaching campaign had effectively created 2 different classes of AI talent inside Meta: the newly acquired 9-figure superstars and the legacy teams who had built the company's original models. The old guard was quickly pushed out. According to the New York Times, the AGI Foundations team, the group responsible for the underperforming Llama 4, was dissolved as part of a major reorganization. With their team gone and a new hierarchy being built above them, its members began to leave. Internal posts viewed by the Wall Street Journal showed at least 3 key members departing around the company's August vesting date. As one senior figure at a rival lab noted, "You can collect a team of all-stars, but that doesn't mean it is an all-star team." Meta bought the talent. Now he faced a more difficult challenge: turning a collection of high-priced free agents into a cohesive unit. This brings us to the hiring freeze. After a period of rapid talent acquisition and internal restructuring, a hiring pause is a logical step to integrate the new teams and consolidate the new strategy. That new order is taking shape. The Wall Street Journal reports that Meta's AI efforts are now being restructured into 4 distinct teams under the umbrella of the Meta Superintelligence Labs, one focused on the new superintelligence moonshot, another for product, a third for infrastructure, and a fourth for long-term research. It's a clear attempt to create lanes for the new and old talent to coexist. But as Meta was reorganizing internally, a new external pressure was building. Wall Street was losing its patience. In an August research note, analysts at Morgan Stanley issued a note of caution. They cautioned that the fast-rising stock-based compensation offered by Meta could dilute shareholder value without any clear innovation gains. The message was unmistakable. The era of the blank check for AI spending was over. For the first time since the AI arms race began, investors were demanding to see a return on the multi-billion-dollar investment. The pressure to not just acquire talent, but to make that talent profitable was now immense. So what does this sequence of events tell us about Meta's AI strategy? The company calls the final step basic organizational planning. But the journey to this point began with the slow erosion of its foundational research lab, which led to a critical product setback. That setback prompted an aggressive talent acquisition phase, which in turn created mounting pressure for the AI reorganization we see today. But this episode is really a symptom of a much larger, more fundamental gamble that every tech giant is now being forced to make. The hard truth is that 2 years into the generative AI boom, no one knows for certain if this is a true technological revolution or the biggest bubble in history. And that uncertainty forces an impossible choice. If the AI hype turns out to be a bubble, and the search for a true profitable use case comes up empty, then this multi-billion-dollar spending spree will be remembered as another Metaverse moment, a catastrophic miscalculation that burned immense shareholder capital for nothing. But if AI is the true platform shift that many believe it to be, then Zuckerberg's frantic spending isn't just understandable, it's the only logical move. In a revolution this massive, the cost of being left behind is infinite. It forces your hand, and you have to be willing to overpay for talent just to stay in the game. This is the brutal calculus facing Meta. The company has placed a massive, irreversible bet, and the hiring freeze is the company catching its breath before the next, even more expensive phase of the race. The AI strategy for one of the world's largest companies hinges on which of those two futures becomes a reality. Deconstructing these kinds of high-stakes strategic bets is exactly what we do in our newsletter, ARPU. We go beyond the headlines to analyze the second-order consequences of tech's biggest stories. To understand what this new era of the AI talent wars means for the industry, you can subscribe at the link in the description below. Thanks for watching.